Well, hi everyone, I'm Dr Elise Stephenson. I'm the curator of the Young Entrepreneurs and Leaders Speaker Series funded by the Australia-ASEAN Council, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and Australian Government. And I am so excited. We are here tonight to discuss what next, Australia-ASEAN entrepreneurship in Brunei. And I'm so blessed to be joined by Shinny and Nazurah, and looking forward to hearing their stories on young entrepreneurship in the region. Yes, absolutely. But I wanted to start, and I've been starting all of my sessions this way, but essentially by hearing a little bit more about your story in terms of, tell us a little bit about your business or your organization, your creative enterprise, whatever it may be, its name, what you do, what you sell, trade, or spend your time doing, who you work with, and what your goals are for what you're doing. And perhaps, Shinny, your mic is off, so I may ask you to volunteer first.
Ira, for not muting my mic. So my name is Shinny, and I'm the co-founder of a little social enterprise called The Collective. So we basically combine outreach for social causes with marketing work, primarily events. So we do a lot of events, and we try to partner with big corporates to give their brands exposure, and at the same time sort of support like young makers and fledgling businesses that are primarily centered around the creative industries. So that has kind of shifted over the years, and of course, like as the industry has grown, like we've sort of changed our business model as well. So currently we are working more with big corporates on campaigns, and the most current one is called Community for Brunei. So it's a digital CSR platform, and the first in the country, so we're super proud about that. And it's basically aimed at uniting and democratizing corporate funding for CSR. So we really wanted to provide almost like the yellow pages for everything happening with social work in the country, which allows for corporates that have funding to divvy up their funding equally. So everyone has a fair go at getting a little bit of funding or getting some exposure, getting volunteers, whatever it may be, because everyone's on the platform.
That's so inspiring, and I love that idea of being yellow pages for CSR, and yeah, being able to democratize access to CSR. That's fantastic. That's really cool. How long have you guys been running?
Like 6 years now, I think. So when it's so funny because when I first came back, it wasn't really a mission to be a social enterprise. I just really, because I'd lived in Australia for 10 years and I'd had to come back really suddenly. And I missed Australia. Like I missed the ability to wear what I wanted, and there were certainly so much more freedom of speech, just freedom of press, so many things that you take for granted when you're overseas. And then having to come back really suddenly and be stuck here, Nazurah, it's almost suffocating. And so I just wanted to feel like I was, enjoying some of those privileges again in Australia. So we just started doing these little pop-up markets, which at the time was also, for some weird reason, super controversial, which you think is so silly. It's like what is controversial about a pop-up market and having like an art installation there? But everyone I talked to about it when I first started doing it was really just like, oh, you can't do that. Art is not a thing here. It's very taboo, and they want to prove that. And I just thought, well, you know what? I'm just gonna do it anyway, because if I don't, I really don't know like what I'm gonna do. So it just started to snowball. I think it created a cultural change that led to more and more, and then that led to the big corporates coming. So we sort of like reversed it. We went the other way and kind of went to consumer first and built that culture from the ground up. So yeah, so it's really, yeah.
Wow. Sorry, did I interrupt you then?
I was just gonna say, like, we actually work with mostly young people, so that's the funny thing about us is we're like an in-betweener sort of company. So we always get people that are coming here for their first job and then kind of moving on to the corporate world.
That's fascinating. So interesting too, because a lot of the work that I've done across lots of different ASEAN countries has been that, particularly in, where there may be some elements of maybe an oppressive, kind of cultural situation in whatever shape or form that takes. Often it's young people go into creative industries or they go into enterprise. They're like the two big things. And, I've seen it a lot in, parts of Southeast Asia, particularly where you might not have political participation or where other forms of access may be just a bit more difficult. And I think there's something that's really powerful about that too, because it's a medium of creative expression, but also financial liberation, which are two really important things for young people, I feel. Yeah, that's super cool. What about you, Nazurah? How long have you been doing what you do? Tell us a little bit about it and, what you do.
Okay. My name's Nazurah. I am a self-employed freelance visual artist. So I've been doing this full-time for about 2 years. Before this, I've been working full-time for about 10 years. So I've been doing it on the side. So I'm doing this full-time for about 2 years now. So I like to call myself an artivist, basically. It's basically being an artist and activist. So I create pieces that is connected and strikes up conversations about LGBT matter. And I believe that, just like as Shinny mentions, like freedom of speech is quite limited here and it's quite challenging. So for me to promote my pieces, that's quite of a big of a challenge here. And I believe that art isn't just a piece of work that is merely for decoration, but also it's a tool to network and discuss about issues and matters and what it's representing, basically. And it's also a medium for solidarity, basically. And I did mention that I've been doing this for 2 years now, but I'm going back to a full-time job soon as
wow.
fire and rescue team for the British Air Force. So yeah.
That sounds fascinating. Right.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for that.
Yeah. So. Oh, that's awesome. That's so inspiring though, that you have been doing freelance for 2 years, even so, because that's and for longer, in fact, because it's difficult. The creative industries are often first to be sacrificed when in times of hardship, and it's a real difficult thing because it's also so key to our cultural continuity. And as you mentioned, I love that kind of tool to network and to be there, solidarity for certain communities and to share that experience. Yeah, that's fascinating. For both of you, obviously COVID's been, it's been a story, it's been something, but for what you do, whether it's your kind of creative enterprise or Shinny for the collective, how has it actually affected what you do in your business in both the positive and negative? Open for either of you.
I think Shinny froze.
Oh, she might be. Yeah.
Okay, maybe I can share
on
first. So basically, I've always had my art supplies ordered and delivered from this specific online store from UK because it's way more affordable and there's a whole lot of range of varieties there. But ever since the pandemic, they don't really ship it out.
Okay.
Shinny, you're back.
Yeah, so just like delays in logistics and the rest.
Yeah, and art supplies here, to be honest, are very, very, very limited. Yeah, but it's not so much of a problem because I upcycle most of my materials. So the only problem I have are like the paints.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's pretty cool to hear. With kind of your creative works and how you do you sell? I'm imagining you sell your products online, or is it commission based, or how do you do that logistically? And has that been affected during COVID?
A little bit of both. Like I do commissioned work as well as online. Mostly like for commission work, I do commission pieces for like drawings on people's shoes. Commission work for like art pieces, that's a struggle. That's a struggle. Yeah, that's all I can say.
Yeah, okay, I see. Commission work is often quite difficult. For your other works, I know you're really active on Instagram. Are you able to use platforms like Instagram to sell your work, and how have you found that?
Yeah, I try to, it's actually, I feel like it's quite of a challenge because I try not to step on anyone's toe, especially promoting LGBT. But again, I try not to get so affected because by the end of the day, I can't really please everyone, and everyone can't be on the same page as I am. And like just lately, I've been participating a lot of forums which touches on LGBT issues. And just recently I shared it out on my IG story, and someone from Ministry of Youth actually tried to contact the organizer about it. They were trying to get more in depth of what it is, which was funny because I was expecting them to contact me directly because one of them asked for my number, but they didn't get back to me after that. Yeah.
That is really tricky. It's very, we were doing the Tiny Lit Fest as part of the Brunei's December festival last year with Kat Dard. And yeah, there was a lot of, you know, how do you kind of not heroically, but courageously tell stories that really matter to certain communities, even if it goes against what, you know, some people may want to hear. And there's certainly, yeah, there's a lot involved in that. So I appreciate that that's a difficult line to walk and difficult to balance. Yeah, and in, you know, platforms like Instagram, you know, you're either public or you're private, and, you know, being a private business, you know, or, you know, trying to operate on that, have some sort of financial income in that structure is quite difficult too, I would imagine. What about for you, Shinny? How has COVID affected your business? Been positive or negative?
Yeah, so as I was saying, it's been an interesting time, and for us, it's really been a year of opportunity, if anything. So we kind of had the opposite sort of experience, and it's been really good because everybody's here. We're able to do more events with more traction. Little things like people are purchasing more from the businesses at the pop-up markets. Companies are wanting to spend on things that, despite like there being the issue of like, okay, the government might have certain budgeting issues, that hasn't really affected consumer spending for some reason. So if anything, we've seen a boom in consumer spending, a rise in people starting up small business. So all those things are kind of, I guess, factors that have been really beneficial to us. So we're able to run more campaigns and do more things to help. And I think the pandemic has made everybody more conscious about coming together and working together as a community. So when you go into a big corporate and you pitch about doing community work, they're a little bit more amenable to giving you a bit of funding or amenable to supporting you in some way, because after the pandemic, it was just really clear, like, you know, whatever it is, it's super important to invest back in supporting the community. You might have a profit that you need to make, but at the end of the day, there are no people, there's no profit to be made.
That's so interesting. I mean, what we were mentioning before too about, you know, the lack of travel also meaning that more people have to spend within their own local communities. I mean, I think that's like an unexpected positive in Brunei for sure. I mean, yeah, for, you know, losing kind of out on some of those, some of that kind of consumer spending previously to travel, and, you know, the ease of popping over to Singapore or anywhere else in the world, really. Yeah, that's really fascinating to know.
I read in the newspaper recently that the Ministry of Resources, Primary Resources and Tourism, they're saying that Brunei is set to be self-sufficient for production of livestock for like chicken and beef. Something. There was some sort of, it was maybe chicken and eggs. We were actually set to become self-sufficient instead of importing all that stuff. So, you know, like things like that are really amazing, because it just means the money is actually going to stay in here. You know, more people can actually start up small farms. The money is distributed more equally. So I think it is starting to look like this more evenly spread out society, as opposed to a couple people get really rich and everybody else is kind of stuck at the bottom.
That's fascinating. That's so cool. And, you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens post kind of when borders reopen kind of fully across the world, whether that trend will continue, because, you know, my sense is that as you get a more robust and kind of solid local economy, and, you know, there's cool shops and cool, you know, eating options and all of those sorts of things, people don't need to travel as much too. And I know in Australia too, there's a bit of a realization of actually we've got quite a few cool things in our own backyard. Not that we don't want to travel again, but, you know, it's been good to recognize and realize that, hey, actually it's worth investing in ourselves too. And we have something to offer.
We actually really like it because we haven't had that in-country restriction. I think, you know, other countries have had that, and I think that's something that's been hard because people can't go out. But here, we can't leave the country, but within the country, we're totally free to roam, and no one is really wearing masks. No one is really afraid in a sense. So it's just like being in a safe little bubble. Yeah,
completely. That's right. I mean, I think Australia's a little bit the same. We're lucky that we've, you know, at least where I am in Queensland, you know, we haven't had really lockdowns that much at all. And so, yeah, there is that opportunity. For both of you, thinking about how you get through this period or have got through this period and beyond, what have been some of the main techniques or tools or strategies that you've used to adapt? And, you know, maybe this is a reliance more on developing a domestic internal market, or is it networks? You know, is it utilizing digital technologies? Like, what's actually helped you even amongst all of the uncertainty?
Nice one, go first, or?
Okay. Like I mentioned earlier, like for my mediums, I upcycle items at times. So that's one of the main techniques I use. But other than that, online sessions definitely helps. And as of late, I've been taking part in forums and being part of the panelists to share out and somewhat discuss about my artworks and LGBT issues. And mostly that's been taken online, basically.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's like a lot of online stuff though, and it really, really helps. And I guess it also helps that everyone can actually attend it. And I guess it's more spread out, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel that too. It's kind of democratizes access to, you know, people or speakers that you might not have otherwise heard from or learned their stories. That's really cool. And how do people go about finding you for panel positions? And, you know, how have you found adapting to the world of kind of speaking online about your work? And, or did you do a lot of that before the pandemic too?
No, it actually started off during the pandemic. Before this, I basically created like art pieces after art pieces, basically. And ever since, I think there was an ASEAN Youth Forum, basically. They were searching for an special repertoire.
Oh, yep.
So I just I signed myself like I volunteered for that, basically. And that was last year, I think. So ever since then, they kind of just branched out here and there and just started promoting myself through my artwork from there, basically.
That's so cool. And so cool that, you know, of course, people want to hear about these stories too. And so I imagine you'd actually be in very high demand.
She's being honest. She's amazing.
That's what I figured also. Oh, that is really, really super cool. Yeah, and I think that's a good way to do it too, because, you know, it's one thing to produce the work and it's another thing to have the story go with it, because that is part of what you do and part of the creative, I don't know, what people want to learn more about too. It's not just a transactional thing in a way, I feel. Yeah, that's cool. What about for you, Shinny? What tools or techniques have been helpful for you?
I think for us, it's really just been about like embracing change and being quicker to move with the market. So with for example, Community for Brunei, we built that platform after pitching it to the bank and launched it within like 3.5 weeks. So we built that digital space, you know, did all the branding, got all the vendors together, everything, and we did it really quickly, and it just was like we just saw like with how things were moving, we had to move really quickly or the opportunity would have been lost. And so I think it's taking that as a learning lesson, and you know, oftentimes you kind of think, okay, well, it's something is there and we'll just take our time and we'll do it this. We've got unlimited amount of time to do stuff. And, you know, when it was COVID, it was really like, okay, you've got no time, you just got to get it done and capitalize on an opportunity and make sure that you get it sorted, or else things will kind of change so quickly that whatever you're working on now is completely irrelevant the next day. So for us, it's really been about embracing that and just knowing that embracing change is everything and keeping an eye on the trends.
Yeah, I see that. And actually, it's been interesting. A lot of the other entrepreneurs I've talked to who, you know, have had to really transition to a lot of online stuff. I mean, keeping up with the change and adapting quickly. I mean, you know, even talking about social media and the need to capture audiences and, you know, what do you want? Are you on TikTok? Are you on Instagram? Do you do everything? Like, you know, that's quite a creatively draining process as well as, you know, creative process, right? Because there's so much that you've got to keep up with. So it's, yeah, being able to pivot quickly, I suppose, and innovate.
So many, I'm not a tech person at all, but, you know, we really saw that everything was moving to a digital space. So we really, you know, as you said, we had to just pivot and turn very quickly to embracing that new sort of movement towards digitalization.
Yeah, totally. That's it. Exactly. And for both of you looking ahead, we're still in a pretty big period of uncertainty, I suppose. But even besides that, you know, what do you see as some of the challenges to growing or keeping on doing the work that you're doing? You know, is it, I don't know, is it something to do with how you involve kind of team members or grow as an organization, or is it around how you keep creative momentum or even find the time if you're starting a full-time job? Like, what do you anticipate to be the challenges looking ahead?
For me personally, the challenge would possibly be having the officials to accept or even agree on having something that isn't quite to their interest. But it's a great opportunity to show that there is no harm in promoting diversity and inclusivity, which is to embrace the minorities. So the only problem I have here is the challenge is this internal fear of getting into trouble, which I don't see I am doing anything. So that's basically the challenge, basically. And it's also a challenge for me to actually gather people to voice up with me. So mostly it's just doing it on behalf. So it's quite of a challenge. So I think it's hopefully in the near future it'll be different, hopefully.
Yeah, and feel free to not answer any of these questions, but, you know, from my observations and, you know, being lucky enough to meet with and work with some of the LGBTIQ+ community when I was in Brunei, being queer myself, you know, it often you have to stand up for people who perhaps aren't there yet, and it can be quite a lot of burden on your shoulders too. You know, how do you, or how are you able to support yourself during this time? And, you know, are there things like a network, or, you know, is this where an international collaboration or partnerships or that international support is helpful? Or, you know, what does help you, I suppose?
As of now, ASEAN Youth Forum just had a queer get-together for Pride Month, basically. So we just had that yesterday, and they're planning on doing it on a quarterly basis to get queer people within the region, not just specifically just queer people, but also allies to get together. So that way, you know, we'll be in the solidarity community from within the region. So that's great. So that basically helps.
That's awesome. And actually, a lot of the amazing entrepreneurs we've just happened to interview have been doing some really cool projects around LGBTI+. When I send out the link to all of the, you know, great roundtables that took place, there's some fantastic ones in Thailand, And one of our speakers from an earlier International Women's Day event in Vietnam, he's now the Vietnam's first openly gay man running for politics, which is so exciting to see just how many cool people are out there and actually, standing up. So my feeling is there's a groundswell happening in the region, which is very exciting too. So I guess for, on a very related topic, I'm really interested to hear about the supports that are needed next, right? So, you've both taken part to varying degrees in either exchanges or kind of collaborative forums or programs that help to build networks across the region or within Brunei. What would most support you or other entrepreneurs like you that you might know to expand, whether that is within your country, the region or the world, or simply just to keep doing what you do, right? Would it be mentoring, resources, specific programs, training, research? What are the kinds of things that you would find really valuable for the next steps? Either of you? Yep, Nazurah, go for it. Oh, Shinny.
Oh, sorry, did you want to go, Naz?
You go ahead, you go ahead. I'll go after.
It's polite, we're like doing ourselves. I think the ability to know that we have cover from other countries politically and also just through business dealings, that actually is incredibly helpful to us because Brunei politics is one thing, but then once you kind of have foreign politics coming into play, whatever you're doing, that tends to be something that gives you a bit of protection when it comes to dealing with the government. And as I think it's pretty clear now from what we've been saying, it's a little bit of an oppressive situation. So yeah, I think the ability to expand foreign markets, learning opportunities for best practices, and just having that connection to the outside world is super, super important. And we're still a small country, so at the end of the day, our ability to scale is really limited. So we do need that external market to build more revenue streams.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that. And it's similar in Australia. I mean, we are bigger than Brunei, but also, comparative to the US or many other Southeast Asian nations, we've got a pretty small population, and it's, depending on what kind of market you're after and what your dreams are for expansion or not, then you have to work within that constraint or see ways of flipping it and moving beyond. What about for you, Nazurah?
I feel like there's not much statistics and data that comes around here, and especially in the context of LGBT, especially that it's a challenge to gather concrete data about it. And I'm currently also a volunteer for this NGO here, which we cover on sexual violence. And even for that, we struggle in gathering data because most evidence we're told not to share it out. So it's hard to actually have a learning point, basically. So by the end of the day, what we're told is to gather data from Google and within the region and just try to relate what Brunei can relate to it. So it's hard. It's basically statistics and data is something that I think it's important.
And it is something, both topics which touch on taboos in society. It's been interesting to watch in Australia, for instance, still our LGBTIQ+ data is lacking over a lot of different indicators, and it's taken census a little while to catch up on some of those really important data points. And some businesses, some universities are increasingly doing it, but it is still a little bit patchy. But what has been interesting has been that since Australia got marriage equality in 2018, so many young people, I think, you know, the average worldwide statistic is, you know, 1 in 10 people will identify as LGBTIQ+. In Australia, in a lot of schools, it's as high as, you know, 25%, or, you know, a growing population, because young people are increasingly seeing, well, hey, you know, I don't have to be X or Y. I don't have to identify as anything if I want, you know, this is, norms are changing. And so you see the data collection also changes with that, but it's an evolving conversation at quite a national level and a societal level. And until we get better data, then we don't really understand, you know, necessarily what's the best way forwards too. Yeah, that's really valid points. For both of you, so what's the big dream? You know, if you could continue doing what you do, you know, would it be to continue the organizations or your freelancing exactly as it is, like 10, 20, 30 years down the line? What would you hope comes out of some of this really very entrepreneurial on both fronts work? Very, I mean, artivist, as you say it, Nazurah, like what's the dream?
I'm going to keep creating, and I'm going to keep having discussions about the community, and hopefully in 20, 30 years, this conversation that we'll be having, there won't be any internal fear as much anymore. That will be the dream, basically, in
I
the
love
future.
that.
Yeah, so hopefully we'd also be able to have a solid platform that caters to the LGBT people as well. And yeah, that'll be
That's
the
super
dream.
inspiring. And hopefully well before 30 years.
Hopefully. I mean, it's going ever so slowly, I guess, because I don't see myself, like I couldn't see myself having this conversation with anyone else, even online, even within the region, for the past few years. But only now that we get a lot of people within the region having this conversation, and it's going ever so slowly, but it's going.
I think you're right. It's something that, yeah, I wasn't being talked about at all only a few years ago, or was being talked about in a negative, and now is really seen as such a marker of diversity and strength. And, you know, I almost feel like there's a little bit of a, you know, hey, if we don't do something, we're missing out, you know. And so I kind of see from a lot of governments and regional standpoints is actually, you know, they're taking in the lessons from internationally, but also connecting with their community, recognizing that so many of our Indigenous and ethnic minority communities had really varying understandings of gender and sexuality. So that's super exciting.
Yeah.
What about for you, Shinny? What's the big dream?
Oh, I think, honestly, I would be really happy to keep doing what I'm doing. No, it's really tough to be. It is really tough to be an entrepreneur. But I think if I didn't have the passion for what I'm doing, I wouldn't have lasted this long. And so I think for me, it's just I get so much satisfaction out of seeing positive change. I get so much satisfaction out of seeing people connect together, or a cause being highlighted more where previously was ignored. So those kinds of things are the sort of intrinsic things that drive me to do what I do, and I think I would be happy to continue doing that forever if I could. But I think we, like, for us as a business, we're really looking to cross the border and do more work in the Asia Pacific region, and especially with Australia. So with the Asian Collab program, it was really cool because I met so many people that I was just like, wow, like, you know, for example, we have a kindness campaign that we wanted to launch in Brunei. And it's a national level campaign strategy where we're trying to teach kindness at like all levels of the country. So kindness, like at work, kindness at school, like all the way down to like if you're like a kid in kinder, you're learning about kindness. And so now that I've connected with people in Australia that are doing similar things, I can now go, wow, we can do something that not only impacts Brunei, but actually impacts maybe Australia or even wider than that.
Oh, that's cool. And I'd love to hear more about the kindness campaign too. And yeah, you're absolutely right though. It's just when you see, like, you know, you're doing such similar work, and, you know, whether it is around kindness, around LGBTIQ rights, around CSR, there is so much there that actually sharing is very valuable. And also just so good to actually know that other people out there care about what you care about too.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool. So my final question is, you know, any plans to return to Australia, you know, or in the kind of works that you both do, you know, do you see any potential for Australian collaboration? Are there any things that you'd love to see in the future? You know, how do you see Brunei and Australia working together?
Like, right, Nazurah, I feel like Australia and Brunei actually, you know, up till recently, Australia was still seen as a bit of a foreign land. But I think that's really changing the more that we're seeing talks like these happening, or people are coming over, you know. And previously we were having like musicians from Australia that were coming over to Brunei to do cultural performances. And those cultural exchanges really give people this this opportunity to connect with a whole different market. And you know, we're the same, but yet we're different. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity to go both ways and have like create that benefits the creative industry, that benefits different industries here, the environment. Like, we could learn so much from Australia in terms of that. So yeah, I think there's just tons of opportunity.
That's awesome. And I agree with you. Two-way opportunity is really important and good. And I'm, you know, going to Brunei for the first time in 2019. Yeah, it was the favorite country that I visited out of all of the amazing Southeast Asia. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Which was cool. Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect it, insofar as I had some reservations coming in 2019, being the year that it was. But I had such a great time. And I think really it came down to the community was awesome. And, you know, young people across Brunei, really passionate about so many different things that I feel like Australia can really resonate from and learn from too. So that's been really exciting to see.
Yeah, I really hope that we can work with more Australian social enterprises. And,
yeah, definitely. Oh, well, look, I think we're slowly building all of the networks to help make it happen. So I'm on board with you there.
Please.
And I think we have lost Nazurah. I'll launch back in, but for you, Nazurah, what about you in terms of Australia, you know, collaboration, partnership, contact? Would you like to come to Australia, back to Australia? See any potential there?
Sure. For sure. I mean, you got me at there's the legal same-sex marriage there, so you got me there. I don't think I can get married here. But yeah, for sure. Like, the last time I was in Australia, I was attending a friend's wedding. She got married to an Australian, so it was lovely. But she got married during the winter, so it was we were doing photo shoot outside. It was so cold
coming from Brunei too. So
yeah. And I was thinking, wait, isn't this September? What is it called? Isn't it? Yeah, and apparently winter is like earlier or something.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm getting married in September also this year, so I think it will be. I'm bracing myself for it's an outdoor wedding in a field, so
congratulations.
Hopefully not too cold. But that's awesome to hear that you're keen for Australia contact, and you know, as I was just saying, Shinny, you know, the mutual is the feeling is mutual, and I think that there's a really big appetite amongst a lot of young, creative, entrepreneurial, social impact, social enterprise types in Australia, that they actually do want to be connected with their region. And hey, if we look at some of the big challenges out there, we're going to need to be networked and be able to collaborate to going forwards.
Besides that, like, I do have me and some of the peers within the community, we do have conversations with the Australian Embassy
Fantastic.
of what they can actually do to help
Yeah.
within the community, basically. So we do have that conversation every quarterly. So it
That's
just
great.
started, the conversation just started, I think, somewhat last year, beginning of last year. Yeah. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, that's really great. I think those avenues are important to use, because where they can do something, they will, or they'll, you know, yeah, be able to connect with the wider community. So that is awesome. I am going to wrap up the recording. This has been so amazing, and thank you both so much.